Hello children, welcome to online class. I hope you are safe and good. Now we are going to see Standard 9th English Unit 5 poem The River book exercises. Already we have learned the poem. What is the summary of the poem? Yes, do you all remember? Okay. Now we shall revise the book exercise. Are you all ready children? Let's get started. Children, you all know this is the memory poem and you will memorize this poem, The River, okay? So, you all will memorize at least first 10 lines, that is first 2 stanza you will memorize. Okay, so now we shall revise read the following lines and answer the questions given below, that is appreciation questions. How does the river flow? The answer is, how does the river flow? The river flows dancing through the flowers and foliages. How does the river flow? The river flows dancing through the flowers and foliages. Next question. What is meant by foliage? Means leaves of plants. The meaning of foliage is leaves of plants. Okay, next question. River, river, swelling river, on you rush through rough and smooth. Why does the poet mention the river to be swelling? The river is rising, so the poet mentions the river to be swelling. Since the river is rising, so the poet says the river is swelling. What are the surfaces the river flow through? The river flows through the rough and smooth surfaces. It flows through the rough and smooth surfaces. Over the rocks by rose banks, sweeping like impetuous youth. Where does the rose grow? The rose grows on the bank of the river. Which stage of the man is compared here? The youth stage of man is compared here. Next, fourth question. Broad and deep and still as time, seeming still yet still in motion. What is broad and deep? The river is broad and deep. Is the time still? No, the time is not still. Tending onward to the ocean, just like mortal prime. Where is the river flowing to? The river is flowing to the ocean. Finally, it is get mixes with the ocean. What does the poet mean by mortal prime? Now we shall revise the poetic devices. Anaphora. Anaphora is a repetition of certain word or phrase at the beginning of successive lines of writing or speech. Example, see that line had never ended, see that sail had never rounded. Here, see, it is repeated. Okay, so it is meant to be anaphora. Anaphora is the repetition of certain word or phrase at the beginning of the successive lines. So, beginning of the successive lines, if you have a repetition, it is meant to be anaphora. Remaining poetic devices we will discuss later on. Okay, children? Read the following lines and answer the questions. Bright you sparkle on your way over the yellow pebbles, dancing through the flowers and foliage, glancing like a child at play. Pick out the rhyming words. What all the rhyming words we have in this stanza? Just say children, you can say your answer by yourself. What all the rhyming words we have in this stanza? First 4 lines. Way, play, dancing, glancing. Mention the rhyming scheme of the poem. So you all know what is the rhyming scheme. A, B, B, A. We have to see the last line of that poem stanza. Okay, next question. Through the flowers and foliage glancing like a child mention at play. Mention the figure of speech used in the above line. Give various other examples from the poem. Yes. So here we have the poetic device simile. Why? Because the word like. impetuous youth, just like mortal prime. You all know for the simile we will be having either like or as. Then it is simile. Okay, understood children? In that stanza we have got like and as. So that poetic device is simile. The poetic device used in this line is simile. Then simming still, yet still in motion. Pick out the words in alliteration from the above line. So in the above line we have simming still. Okay, simming still is the alliteration words. It's a poetic device which is used in this line. Identify other examples from the poem for alliteration. Other alliterated words are bright you sparkle on your way, you, your. Through the flowers and foliage glancing, flower, foliage. On you rush through rough and smooth, rush, rough. Down you dash into the sea, down, dash. See that line had never sounded, see sounded. See that sail had never rounded, see sail. That is sound. Okay, so these are all the alliterated words which is there in these lines of the poem. Next, pick out the examples of epithet from the poem. So what is epithet? We will learn now. Epithet is an adjective or phrase expressing a quality or attribute regarded as the characteristic of the poem, of a person or the thing mentioned. Little river example. Actually children, epithet is nothing but the name which is given to the river. See here, river to the river, the name is given here is little river, swelling river, brimming river, headlong river. So these are the names given to the river and that poetic device is called as the epithet. Next, pick out the examples for imagery from the poem. What is imagery? Imagery is the name given to the elements in the poem that sparks the senses. It need not be only visual, it can relate any of the five senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste or smell. When you see the lines now, immediately you will start imagine something. Those lines are said to be imagery. That poetic device is said to be imagery. Okay, for example, yellow pebbles. When you hear the word yellow pebbles, you will imagine yourself what is the yellow pebbles. Okay, some other examples we'll see from the poem. Yellow pebbles, impetuous youth, seeming still, dash into the sea, through the flowers and foliage glancing, on you rush through rough and smooth, louder, smarter, brawling, leaping, broad and deep and still, seeming still yet still in motion by rose banks. When you learn this, when you read these lines, now immediately you'll start imagine these words. So the poetic device used here is the imagery. Understood children? Now we shall revise the question answers in paragraph. Yes, how does the poet bring about the comparison of life with the river? Explain it with the reference to the poem. You all know here the river is compared to the human being and we are going to write it in 120 to 150 words. In about 120 to 150 words. First you will write what is the poem name. Poem The River. Poetess Caroline Ann Bowles. The theme of the poem is the power of the river. The flow of the river is compared with the different stages of human life. It goes dancing over the yellow pebbles. It is glancing through the flowers and leaves. It is compared to an innocent child at play. Like a careless youth, it goes through rough and smooth patches of life. It becomes louder and faster. It is sweeping everything all along the way. It is like a matured man who silently marches towards the goal. Finally, it reaches the sea. Human life attains eternity. Next question. Describe how the poem clearly describes about Features, functions and destructive power of the river. Poem, The River. Poetess Caroline Ann Bowles. Team, river can favor but causes fear too. A river is natural water course, usually fresh water flowing towards an ocean, sea or another river. Small rivers can be referred to as stream, brook. Water generally collects in river from precipitation through a drainage basin from surface runoff. Groundwater recharge, springs and glaciers or other sources. River can flow from mountains, through valleys or along plains. River, the source of water, consumption, agriculture and industry. The flow of water in river is never constant. High amount of water flowing in rivers often lead to flooding. Flooding is one of the most common and costly type of disaster, you all know, which we have faced in 2015. A flood results when a river runs out of the confines and submerges the surrounding areas. However, floods have enormous destructive power. Flood occurs naturally. They can environment. It is not always possible to prevent floods, but it is possible to minimize the flood damage. Moral: a river does not just carry water, it carries life. We forgot that water cycle and the life cycle are one. Now we shall revise the next section. Based on your understanding of the poem, complete the summary of the poem by choosing the words or phrases given below. So, prime phrase, yellow pebbles, motionless, stages of human life, sweeping, child, journey, reckless youth. So, in the poem, the poet compares the flow of the river with different stages of human life. The first stanza explains how a sparkling river goes dancing over the yellow pebbles and glancing through the flowers and leaves. These acts of river is compared to the curious and innocent child at play. The second stanza compares the river to the reckless youth and goes through the rough and smooth patches of life. Like a youth, here river becomes louder, faster and sweeping everything all along the way. In the third stanza, the river becomes like a hard-working man who is at the prime phase of life. Here, the deep and broad river seems motionless but keeps moving towards the sea like a matured man who silently marches towards the goal. In the last stanza, the long journey of the river reaches the endless sea like a human life attains eternity. Children, you can kindly memorize this memory poem. First choose stanza, prepare well for your essay 2 exam, write neatly. After completing your January monthly test, you can submit the note at office room. Take care children, meet you again.